take a look at the top 20 most valuable companies in the S&P 500 today. Maybe you don't know all the names on here, but you can definitely pick out the juggernauts on here. It's almost impossible to foresee that corporate behemoths like Apple, Google, Amazon are going to decline anytime soon, let alone go out of business. Their market shares are too big and people are so reliant on them. But take a look at the same chart, this time with the most valuable companies from 1990. You probably recognize a lot of these names, but guess what? 36 years later, only 4 of them remain in the top 20. Those are Walmart, Eli Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, and ExxonMobil. The other 16 have fallen to the wayside. Yes, there was a historical technological revolution during that span, but the point remains. Past dominance does not guarantee future dominance. Hopefully this exercise offers a glimmer of hope to those out there that believe megacorps like Meta and Microsoft are just too powerful and they use their power in nefarious ways and that the common man is helpless. This is the first episode in a new series I'm calling Vote with Your Dollars. And the whole premise is this. People seem to forget that we live in a free market economy, for the most part. Where you spend your money genuinely matters. Every dollar you spend is a vote. It's a thumbs up to a company that says, yes, keep doing what you're doing. Companies are fixated on following those signals. McDonald's would sell steamed broccoli tomorrow if they thought they could make more money doing that, as opposed to selling Big Macs. They don't care about hamburgers. They care about what you're willing to pay for. That's the capitalist machine that we live in. Too many people today think that we are doomed and that these companies are too powerful and that we can't do anything to combat greed, enshittification, price gouging, etc. They sit around hoping a regulatory agency will ride in and save the day, or that the right people will get elected to Congress to fix everything. I'm not saying that regulation and elections don't matter, but if this is your plan, then it's not really a good one. You are waiting on a slow, clumsy, and often captured and corrupt process while completely ignoring the enormous power sitting right in your own wallet. You can reward companies that provide real value and behave ethically, and you can stop funding the ones that don't. So let's talk about a category of company that you should honestly think twice about doing business with: the too big to jail companies. So what does too big to jail actually mean? Essentially, some companies have become so profitable and so massive that breaking the rules is simply a line item on a spreadsheet. They run a cold calculation. What do we make by cutting this corner versus what we might pay in fines if we get caught? And very often the math favors breaking the rules and paying the fine later. These companies are so large that they can absorb financial penalties that would cripple small and medium-sized businesses. The classic historical example is the Ford Pinto. Back in the 1970s, the Pinto had a design flaw where the fuel tank could rupture and catch fire in rear-end collisions. According to internal documents that later surfaced, Ford ran a cost-benefit analysis weighing the cost of a recall against the projected cost of paying out lawsuits and for deaths and injuries. They concluded it was cheaper to let people get hurt and die and then settle the lawsuits later. Human lives were callously reduced to a math problem. When was the last time you saw a corporate executive actually go to prison for white-collar crime? It's exceedingly rare. Instead, what happens is the company pays a fine. We're talking tens of millions, hundreds of millions, and sometimes even billions of dollars. Think about what it means to pay a fine of that size. If you're writing a check for hundreds of millions of dollars to make something go away, you're pretty freaking guilty. Innocent companies don't pay those numbers. But unfortunately, for a company generating tens of billions in annual revenue, a $100 million fine is a rounding error. It's just the cost of doing business. Let's take a look at a few examples of some of the biggest companies in the world paying enormous penalties for bad behavior. The dollar amounts may shock you. Let's start with Amazon. In 2023, Amazon reached a settlement with the FTC for $30.8 million related to its Alexa and Ring products. The details are pretty unsettling. On the Alexa side, the FTC charged that Amazon held on to children's voice recordings indefinitely and used them to improve its algorithms, even after parents asked for the recordings to be deleted. On the Ring side, the FTC alleged that Amazon gave employees and contractors overly broad access to customers' private video footage, which meant that people could watch video from inside and outside your home. Ask yourself, if a company was willing to handle your family's most private moments this carelessly, is this really a company that has earned your unquestioned trust? Google has an even worse track record here related to privacy. Under Illinois' Biometric Information Privacy Act, Google was accused of collecting people's biometric data without proper consent, specifically face scans through the face grouping feature in Google Photos. Google agreed to a $100 million settlement to resolve a class action lawsuit. $100 million, 9 figures, just to settle a case in a single state. But then there's Facebook, in a league of its own. There was a notorious Cambridge Analytica scandal where the personal data of tens of millions of users was harvested and used for political ad targeting without their knowledge. This resulted in a staggering $5 billion penalty from the FTC in 2019. You heard me correctly, $5 billion, a 10-digit penalty. The FTC press release even mentions that this penalty was over 20 times greater than the largest penalty ever assessed to that point by any government in the world related to privacy and data security. And it was one of the largest penalties ever assessed by the US government for any type of violation. In perhaps the most too big to jail fashion you could ever imagine, Facebook's stock actually went up the day the penalty was announced because investors were relieved that the penalty wasn't worse. That tells you everything you need to know about how these companies view fines, not as a deterrent, but at merely an expense on the income statement. But probably the most disturbing example on this list is an episode concerning eBay. Back in 2019, a Massachusetts couple, Ina and David Steiner, ran a small e-commerce newsletter that occasionally published content critical of eBay. In response, several eBay executives and employees orchestrated a genuinely deranged harassment campaign against these two private citizens. The couple received anonymous packages at their home that included, among other things, live cockroaches, live spiders, a bloody pig mask, and a funeral wreath. Clearly, this was an effort designed to intimidate and terrorize them into silence. It's a truly insane story. This was a multi-billion-dollar corporation that had been around for decades, deploying its resources to stalk and harass two ordinary people for writing things it didn't like. Several eBay employees pleaded guilty, and a few were actually jailed. One of the rare instances where prison time actually happened. eBay as a company paid a $3 million criminal penalty to the Department of Justice. The Steiners also pursued a civil case against the company and ended up getting $55.7 million. The fact that this story got so little mainstream coverage is staggering. Now, let me be clear, I'm not trying to get up here on a moral high horse. I still use services from these companies. This isn't about achieving some impossible standard of purity. It's about boundary setting. Think about how this works in your everyday life with normal people. When someone in your life misbehaves, there's a consequence. You expect an apology, you expect them to make amends, and you expect them to do better going forward. If there isn't some kind of behavior correction, you probably take steps to cut that person out of your life. That's how healthy relationships work, and there's no reason your relationship with a corporation shouldn't be any different. Incentives matter. If bad behavior carries no penalty, you get more bad behavior. It really is that simple. So here's my ask. The next time you're choosing a product or a service and there's a competitor that behaves more ethically, even if it's a little more expensive and even if the product is only 85% as good, give it real consideration. Maybe you use tech products and services from companies that are more focused on protecting your privacy. Maybe you buy groceries from more mom and pop type brands. Yes, you might pay slightly more or give up a little convenience today. But remember, free and cheap often come with a hidden price tag: your privacy, your data, and your dignity. And that's a bill that can come due in ways you won't feel until it's too late. If companies believe they won't ever face a penalty that will actually threaten their ability to operate their business on an ongoing basis, then they will not change their ways. Remember, every dollar you spend is a vote. Evidently, fines from regulatory agencies, settlements from lawsuits, and even the rare instances of jail time don't seem to really affect the decision-making processes of these large companies. But if you were to take your money elsewhere and impact these companies' revenue and profit numbers, that could very well change things for the better. What do you think? Does this apply to your life? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.